Good morning. My name is Greg Osborne. I'm with RTI. Today, I'm going to share a video with you about cooling compressed air using a reciprocating air compressor to get the air as cool as it can be to condense the moisture coming out of the compressor and giving you clean, dry air to use in a body shop or some other type of an application. First thing I'm going to do here is share my screen with you. And we are going to start out right here by looking at a compressed air circuit. So there's lots of different types of air compressors available for the body shop. You can have a reciprocating compressor without an aftercooler, which is what many of them are. The drawback with that type of compressor is the discharge temperature is 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. The hotter the air is after it's compressed, the more moisture it will hold in it. So other compressors will have an aftercooler built into them. If there's an aftercooler built into them, it will be an air coil on the discharge side of the compressor. And so the air is compressed. It goes through this cooler that is on the outside of the, typically some type of a fan blade so that it's got air rushing by it. It's usually a coil about 12 to 16 inches in diameter. And then from after it goes through that coil, it goes down into the tank of the air compressor and sits there as well until it's ready to be used. Now, the compressed air coming out of a reciprocating compressor that does not have an aftercooler will be, like I said, 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. When it goes through an aftercooler, it's typically within 25 degrees of ambient temperature. To bring that real world, pretend it's a 75-degree day. Now, after you go through your compression, you compress that air, it goes through the aftercooler on the compressor. The discharge temperature coming out of that aftercooler going into the tank should be about 100 degrees. We know in compressed air that for every 20 degrees you drop the temperature of compressed air, 50% of the moisture in that air stream will go from a mist to a liquid. We'll call that condensate. So it's condensing that moisture by lowering the temperature and dropping it out. So two things we want to do right away. Whenever you've got a compressed air system, it's very important. If you look at the screen, you see where my cursor is on the air compressor. Down at the very bottom, every compressor tank has got a port at the bottom. Coming out of that port's typically a 1/2 inch, and you want to run it into a compressed air. You want to have a drain valve there. Okay, that's what this is. This is a drain valve. At RTI, we call this the ED-2-4. When you come out of your piping, you would come down from your tank, and then you pipe out into this with a coupler and screw this onto the coupler. Now we've got a ball valve right here that shuts it on and off. So because there's always going to be condensate in that tank that's going to be going into this valve, we can set the time and duration on this valve. So with these little dials on here, I can set it so maybe 10 seconds every 30 minutes, or say in the heat of the summer when there's a lot more condensate, you may want to set it to blow for 10 seconds every 15 minutes to keep that moisture out of the tank. Our goal is to keep as much moisture out of that tank as humanly possible so that it doesn't sit in there and rust. And we never want it to get to the point where it starts to migrate up into the piping system. Okay, as the condensate goes through here, there is a Y strainer built into this drain valve with a stainless steel mesh in there. And this stainless steel mesh is going to catch any metal or sludge coming from that air compressor and stop it so that it does not go through into this drain valve down here and ruin it. Okay, so this is a really well-designed piece of equipment, does a phenomenal job. Plug it into the wall, you set your pods on it for time and duration, and it just does its job. I would suggest that you check this Y strainer every time you change your filters or do maintenance on your compressor, and at minimum every 6 months. Okay, so that goes in the bottom of the tank. Now, coming out of the compressor, we've got a ball valve, piece of pipe, and we're going to go to a flexible compressor hose to the wall. The object of this flexible compressor hose is to take away the vibration of the compressor from transferring to the piping. Blue aluminum piping is what I recommend to all of my customers because it's very thin-walled. It dissipates heat very, very well. This is a very thin-walled aluminum tube, and it dissipates heat extremely well. I always recommend up through 20 horsepower, at least a 1-inch or 25 millimeter blue aluminum tube. This has got a lot of surface area. If you measure from one side all the way around this tube, it's actually 3 1/8 of an inch of surface diameter going around that pipe. Conversely, if you're looking at a 20 millimeter tube and you measure around the outside diameter, it's only 2 1/2 inches. So it's important to me that you use the largest size pipe that you can with what you're doing. So anything 5 horsepower through 20 horsepower, I try to standardize at the 1-inch or 25 millimeter blue aluminum tubing because it dissipates heat extremely well. As a matter of fact, anywhere from 31 to 35 feet of this tubing will definitely drop my temperature at least 20 degrees or more, depending if there's some airflow going across that piping. So we're going to stand the piping out off the wall in these little brackets designed for this pipe, so air can get all the way around it. Now we're going to go back to the diagram. So we're going to travel up to the top. And this is actually a kit that's called an EX208 cooling loop kit. I get to the top, I 90, go left, I go down, I go to the right, I go down, I go to the left, I go down, and back to the right. And then I come down. I've got a T at this point, which goes to my bypasser on my filters. The reason that is there is so that I can change those filters even if we're still running in the shop. Okay, I would simply close this valve and open this valve over here, and then the air is going to travel this way. This valve would be closed and this valve would be closed. Okay, but I can also drain this system off by closing this valve and opening this valve, closing this valve, and then opening this petcock right down here at the bottom to drain all the air off of this system. And then by closing this valve again here, now we've got our bypass running this way around the system over toward the air dryer. So as the air travels through here, it's going to be dropping temperature. As it runs down through this valve, if this valve is open, we get to the Y strainer here. So this Y strainer is going to stop any rust or contamination from getting into this float drain valve down below here called the TD5 automatic float drain. This valve right here, this Y strainer is called a JBVY-500-M. It's a magnetic Y strainer. It'll capture and hold any metal particulate that comes from the air compressor or from the tubing or from that hose that gets into your system. We don't want any metal to get into the drain valve because it could affect the operation of the float and the seat and stop it from draining or cause it to drain continually. We don't want that. So what happens is water condenses as the mist condenses turns into water, it's going to run straight down. It's going to go through the Y strainer. It's going to cause a float in the TD5 to lift up and create a gap in the seat, allowing that water to drain straight out the bottom. Okay. Now the air is going to travel this way. It's going to go through this ball valve. It's going to go into the first stage filter. That first stage filter, it's in a canister like this, okay? And then this is the head of it. Now what happens is the filter element is going to go up into here like this. When the air comes in, it's going to create a centrifugal action and spin the air around the bottom, around this filter element, down to the bottom of the bowl. And then it has to change direction and go up through this filter element. The first stage is always a serrated stainless steel mesh. It's very, it's got a lot of surface area. It's very serrated, and it holds a lot of moisture, and it helps to attach any type of moisture that's in a mist form will coalesce and attach to that stainless steel. Over time, droplets start to form, they come together, and then they drop out of the bottom down into the bottom of this bowl. Now this bowl has got down in the bottom of it an automatic float drain. Hard to see, but you can hear it as I go up and down. As water fills into the bottom of this bowl, it's going to cause that seat, that actually the float, to lift up, opening a gap in the seat and draining water out the bottom. So that's your first stage. Your most important stage in this operation, because this is going to take all particulate to 3 micron, and it's going to remove 99% of moisture that's in that airstream that's in a mist form. The second stage filter that you can see going down the line right here, if you look at my cursor, is the coalescing filter, which looks like this. Inside of this coalescing filter, it's completely white, which is going to be difficult for you to see, but I always look inside a filter and check it on the inside because you want to know what it looks like. Number one, it's white, it's clean, and then you can compare it later on when you go to check it. So if you ever see a black spot appear on the outside of this red foam, that means the oil has fully saturated the inner core basilica fibers of this filter and is starting to migrate to the outside. Now oil can actually pass downstream and get into your air dryer. We don't want that to happen. So I say initially check this at 2 months. Definitely never go longer than 6 months before you change these filters out. This will stop oil to 0.01 microns. And that's the size of the molecule of oil. This will keep oil from migrating downstream on you. And it's very, very effective. So after we get past this second filter, now we're going to drop down into a refrigerated dryer. The refrigerated dryer is going to cool the air down to about 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So now we've gone from around 100 degrees after this loop down to about 35 degrees through this cooler, and we've actually dropped the temperature of the air about 3 times. So for every 20 degrees, we drop the temperature of compressed air. 50% of the moisture in that airstream is going to drop out as condensate. There's the automatic drain valve built into this dryer that will, just like the ED2-4, it will come on a pre-programmed amount of time, and it's going to shoot that moisture out of the refrigerated dryer. But this is going to take out a lot more moisture because we dropped the temperature about 3 times from 100 degrees down to 30 degrees. So when it comes out of the dryer, now it's fully acceptable for it to go out into the shop. I've got a regulator here. I could be setting my pressure there, or it can just run out to the shop. Other dryers that you could use in place of this dryer would be a desiccant dryer at this point, or a point-of-use desiccant dryer down at the end, possibly by a spray booth or some type of finishing operation. I'm going to show you another diagram very similar to this one. And this is the TD, this is the EX208 cooling loop with the TD5 drain at the bottom. And as you can see, we come out of the compressor, we go through a flexible loop, we go to the wall, the bracket on the pipe. It holds that pipe out from the wall so that we get cooling around it. This is an entire kit with with about 35 feet of blue aluminum tubing in it. It's actually close to 40 feet altogether when you figure all the piping in, but the actual cooling portion is about 31 to 35 feet of cooling tubing, and the air is going to run through the exact same configuration we talked about before. All the cuts for you to make are not pre-done, but they're all in the diagram, so you can cut to the right size. Basically, you cut this tubing with a circular cutter that goes around it, just like you're cutting a piece of copper piping. And the blue aluminum pipe actually dissipates heat better than copper piping, and that's why I use this as opposed to copper piping. So that's the EX208 cooling loop kit. These canisters are 17 inches, so they're a bigger filter and they do a tremendous job. This canister that I've got right here is an 11-inch canister, so it's quite a bit longer than this one and a little bit bigger in diameter. That's all I want to share with you today, but in future videos, I'm going to be talking about other types of dryers and also point of use type of filtration and many other things. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to catching you on the next video. Make it a great day, and take care.